Hey, welcome back. Today I'll be reacting to abaandpreach's video titled Jordan Peterson Breaks Down Crying and the Internet Cheered.
I want to ask you just quickly, the film director Olivia Wilde has a new movie out, which she says is based on you, this insane man, this pseudo-intellectual hero to the incel community. Incel being these weirdo loner men who are despicable in many ways. Is that you? Are you the intellectual hero to these people?
So, to start, I'm not too fond of Piers Morgan's insensitivity to those who are labeled by society as incels. Whenever you have a group of people come to you and tell you that they're hurting, that they're suffering, whether they're men or women, whether they're people of color, non-people of color, whether they're straight folk or gay folk, you have to listen. Nobody's saying that you have to agree, but you have to listen to what they're saying so that you can understand who they are, what their experience is, and what you can do to help, if anything. Another thing that's making me feel unsettled is how Piers Morgan just brought it to my attention that Olivia Wilde is planning on making a movie depicting Jordan Peterson as this lunatic who is going around radicalizing young men. I have my own critiques of Jordan Peterson that I will probably share throughout the course of this video. With that being said, I don't like the idea of Hollywood profiting from the confusion and disillusion of young men. As if Fresh and Fit Andrew Tate and the other guy, the one who does all the funny faces, Sneako, aren't bad enough. The more I dive into this world, the more obvious it is that you have an entire industry of people who are generating hundreds of millions of dollars by peddling toxic messages that keep men in a state of confusion and frustration. And while we're on this topic, I want to caution you to be mindful of how much of this content you're consuming. Even my content. Why do I say this? Because the empirical data is fairly conclusive and it demonstrates that there are significant links between the quantity of red pill / manosphere content one consumes and the decline of one's mental health. So although in the moment it might feel cathartic or satisfying to watch videos of feminists getting dunked on, or some fuckface showing off his Lamborghini, that shit is not good for you. Which brings me to a topic that I have yet to address on my channel, but that I feel obligated to address since this video kind of touches on it, which is the failure of today's educators. Yeah, of teachers, of professors. And in fact, I think many of us can learn a thing or two from the Jordan Petersons and Andrew Tates of the world. So for instance, last week, I saw a tweet from someone claiming to be an elementary school teacher. The tweet itself got over 400,000 likes. In it, she claimed how ridiculous it was that her 11-year-old students were coming into class and proclaiming their love for Andrew Tate. She also reported that one of her students who sung his praises turned to a girl and told her that she was fat and that she needed to be thin. Now, if I remember correctly, some of the replies to her tweet included, "Gonna put my 9-year-old in martial arts classes. I don't want these incels going anywhere near my daughter. 11-year-olds getting into incel shit is so scary," right? These were the responses to her tweet. And what I gathered was that her mission wasn't necessarily to take down Andrew Tate. It was to make parents aware of the content that their kids are consuming. But what she didn't include in her tweet was how she responded, or if she responded to what these boys were saying. She also made no recommendations for how adults should respond to rhetoric about Andrew Tate or misogyny. Therein lies the problem. See, the difference between Andrew Tate and that teacher is that Tate, much like Jordan Peterson, has an intimate understanding of what young men are looking for, which is a strong male role model. But he's also sensitive to the issues that young men face in our society. So much so that he even created Hustlers University, right? To teach men how to be money-making soldiers, I think he calls them. You know, basically it's like clip all my videos, share all of my content, and invest in the latest shitcoin. Okay, there you go. I just saved you $500. But despite the fact that Andrew Tate's enterprise has the letters MLM written all over it, the reason why HU is so popular is because it caters to a specific audience of young men who in recent years have seen their wages stagnate and their career prospects decline. Now, will his crypto shit really help these guys reach financial independence? No. Does his prescription on how to get bitches and riches lead to happiness and fulfillment in life? Fuck no. But what his commentary does do, which is what Jordan Peterson's commentary does as well, is provide what looks like an escape from a cruel world that has forgotten about young men. So much so that on the surface, his platform appears to provide a safe space for young men and boys to openly discuss problems that are affecting us on a daily basis, like issues with intimacy, financial stress, the agony of loneliness, tips on how to manage our emotions. And that is why so many young men maintain that Andrew Tate and Jordan Peterson are the ones who give them a voice, and that their content helps them cultivate meaning and self-worth. It's not because they're weirdos. I mean, some of y'all might be weird. I'm a little weird. But the sad truth is that those guys are correct. Both Andrew Tate and Jordan Peterson, although they have their own separate approaches, they have managed to use their wit and their cunning to do what many people in my profession, education, have failed to do, which is to empower young men, right? You have Tate, who claims getting rich is easy and tells his audience that they need to take responsibility for their lives and get their shit together. Peterson provides a more softer approach that involves empathizing with these young men and acknowledging that although the road to self-improvement is a long and arduous one, you gotta start with what you can control. So clean your room. They both claim that despite the powers that be, despite those who are trying to emasculate you, those who are trying to demonize you, there is still hope in that it is possible for the ordinary man to rise up and make something of himself. And goddamn, that's a powerful message, because it's a message of hope in a hopeless world. It's a message of resilience that many of us who feel like giving up need in order to get us through the day. And even though the message itself is priceless, which it is, there are some serious blind spots that the people who are spreading it don't seem willing to address, which is part of the issue, right? And I'm aware that it might be painful to hear that people like Jordan Peterson have some serious ideological, emotional, and psychological blind spots that he needs to work on. But if we want to be honest with ourselves, and if we want to break this codependent relationship that many of us have with our idols, we got to talk about the issues in their rhetoric. We can't, on one hand, celebrate their anti-establishment rhetoric without acknowledging that in many ways, they are in fact the establishment. We have to be honest about how their message is predicated on having external enemies. And let me tell you something else. Any philosophy that says you need to locate external enemies in order to find joy and fulfillment in life needs to be called into question. Because in Plato's view, the secret to the life worth living lies in our capacity to learn how to die. And you might be asking, what does that have to do with anything, Manny? You're doing a 180, you're talking about Plato. What does learning how to die have to do with learning how to live? Hear me out. Plato wasn't talking about death in a physical sense. Instead, he encouraged us to prepare for death as a means of freeing ourselves from psychological bondage and to live free without a life of fear. Now, how do you do that? You do it by dying daily. And what does it mean to die daily? You do it by examining yourself and transforming your old self into a better self. It means that you question your assumptions and presuppositions about the world so that you wake up with fresh perspectives that don't control you or hold you hostage. And one of my critiques of Jordan Peterson is that he has not fully engaged in the process of learning how to die, learning how to transform himself into a better self, which is why his message strikes many as divisive, ideologically charged, and politically driven. But I want y'all to think about that, to think more about that. What does it mean to die? Because we live in a society that avoids death and has what's known as a Peter Pan complex. Everybody wants to be young. We don't want to grow up. Sometimes you have to grow up because that's part of the process of making yourself better, so that you retain the aspects that make you childlike: curiosity, sense of wonder, having an eagerness to engage with life. But you don't want to be childish. You want to monitor those levels of grandiosity, self-centeredness, and greed that all of us struggle with. Even me, especially me. See, and much of living has to do with the process of engaging in self-love. If you want to be countercultural, engage in self-love. Because Lord knows we live in a society that's designed to make us hate ourselves, right? Every time we watch these influencers, they go out of their way, whether directly or indirectly, to convince us we're not rich enough, we're not handsome enough. We're not smart enough. But I'm here to tell you that's not true. Fuck all that shit. You need to do the best that you can do without comparing yourself to other people. Do the best that you can do because you are on your path, and your path is not like anyone else's. Now, forewarning, I'm getting ready to say something that might rub some of you the wrong way, but I need you to stay with me. Don't pull back. No, don't pull back, because this is some real shit and it touches on the complexities of life. And part of the issue with why the incel community has grown as large as it is, and part of the reason why some of y'all might be in the mess that you're in, is because some motherfuckers try to simplify shit that's not so simple. Another respectful critique of Jordan Peterson. So let's go back to the establishment comment that I made, because I know that somebody in the comments is going to say, what makes Jordan Peterson or Andrew Tate part of the establishment? They're millionaires and elitists. What makes Jordan Peterson an elitist? The fact that he hangs out with the richest man on earth, who was a second away from buying Twitter. The fact that he has his PhD and earned tenure at one of the top colleges in the world. Less than 1% of people accomplish those feats. The fact that he quit academia because he was fed up with being surrounded by leftist scholars. I'll tell you what, no academics I know have access to billions of people around the world because their best friend just happens to have the largest podcast on earth that reaches billions of people. And I'm not saying any of these things are inherently bad. I'm sure Jordan Peterson has been through hell and back in order to get to where he is today, and in order to accomplish the things that he has. But we can't just pretend that the same motherfuckers complaining about cancel culture right before they do an interview with Joe Rogan or Piers Morgan are keeping it a buck with us. But forget about all that. The main issue I take with Jordan Peterson's rhetoric is how he uses women and other minorities as scapegoats for why men are lonely and marginalized. I don't know about you, but the reason I've been single for 3 years has nothing to do with a trans person wanting me to call them by their pronouns. It's because I have almost 3 decades of suppressed trauma that I'm trying to unpack, sort through, and manage every day. So in that vein, what I find destructive about Jordan Peterson's rhetoric at times, is that he essentially sends young men, especially young white men, mixed signals. Mixed signals that on one hand, they have the power to get their shit together, but that on the other hand, the reason they can't get their shit together is because women and minorities are preventing them from doing so. See, so that's the paradox he exists in. The reason you can't get a job is because women are taking too much space in the workplace, in the economy. The reason you can't focus while you're at work is because women are using makeup as a way to subtly seduce you. The reason you can't find a wife is because women find marriage oppressive. The reason you're not getting paid enough is because we have these Marxist feminists conspiring to let immigrants into the country uncontrollably while conspiring to give minorities raises at your expense. You see what I'm saying? In a sense, he's using his platform to scapegoat minority groups and people with progressive views. But I know I just went off on one hell of a tangent.
Sure, why not? You know, people have been after me for a long time because I've been speaking to disaffected young men. You know, what a terrible thing to do that is. I thought the marginalized were supposed to have a voice.
It's making you emotional. Talk about that.
Well, God, you know.
Okay, this just got even more complicated. Do I want to open this can of? So I'll start with this. I believe with every fiber of my being that Jordan Peterson's tears are real and genuine. But what makes this dicey and what makes it very difficult, not impossible, but difficult to empathize with someone like him is that on one hand, you use your platform to call transsexuals things and it's, you romanticize the legacy left by Adolf Hitler. You sue people who criticize you publicly. You blame multiculturalism for the downfall of Western civilization, which some can say is a dog whistle to oppose Black and brown people coming into the country you are a citizen of. You deny the fact that climate change even exists. And you completely, without any hesitation, dismiss the pain and suffering of others, but especially those who experience forms of racism, sexism, xenophobia, and anti-LGBT sentiment. So, although I do empathize with him, my empathy contains a healthy dose of skepticism, because I'm sorry, you got to keep that same energy. You can't throw stones and hide your hand. You can't disrespect people and what they go through, then expect them to empathize with you because you're breaking down and crying on national TV, right? You can't on one hand spend your whole career shitting on minority groups, then expect people to turn around and show you love when your love is not all inclusive. I mean, if you look through Jordan's tweets, you would think that lefties aren't even human beings.
It's very difficult to understand how demoralized people are. And certainly many young men are in that category. And you get these casual insults, these incels. What does it mean? It's like, well, these men, they don't know how to make themselves attractive to women who are very picky, and good for them. Women, like, be picky. That's your gift, man. Demand high standards from your men. Fair enough. But all these men who are alienated, it's like they're lonesome and they don't know what to do, and everyone piles abuse on them.
Yeah, but my brother, this is the issue. I don't know who he has in his circle. I don't know who is checking him when he needs to get checked, because we all need those people in our circle. People who hold us accountable and check us when we need to be checked. But part of the issue with what he's saying is that he's making this epidemic worse. The shit that you, Andrew Tate, Fresh and Fit, and all the others are teaching men is toxic, bro. Like I said at the beginning of this video, there's a big body of research that's been done on the consumption of red pill / manosphere content. And it's pretty much unanimous that the more content you consume, the sadder and more depressed you'll be. It might feel good to exist in an echo chamber where you're hearing guys from all over the world confirm your biases and presuppositions, but bro, that shit takes a toll. It's like being in a room full of people who are farting all at the same time. They're letting out gas, they're relieving themselves, but that gas isn't going anywhere. It's still staying in the room, you know? And everybody has to deal with it.
In that brief moment, you got very emotional. Why?
It's really something to see constantly how many people are dying for lack of an encouraging word. And to say you're a net force for good if you want to be.
Do you believe you're a net force for good?
Net, yes. In all the details, probably not. You know, no one's perfect. So people make their mistakes as they stumble uphill.
Jordan's been a fascinating interview. Thank you very much.
But it's so funny that we live in a world where every feminist and their girlfriends talk about
It's extremely unfair to generalize a group by saying every single person in that group, right? Because there are millions of self-proclaimed feminists all over the world, most of which aren't even on Twitter and probably don't know Jordan Peterson because they're not wrapped up in the internet world, right? I'm not defending feminists by any means. I would not call myself a feminist necessarily. I advocate more for egalitarianism, right? The notion that all people should at the very least have equal opportunities to achieve things in life. But I just had to point that out because something tells me that Abba hasn't even gotten 10 words out of his mouth, but I can already get the sense that he's triggered and that he's gonna go into a tirade where he starts to overgeneralize people, which ironically is what he's getting ready to criticize feminists for doing to incels.
Men do this, men need to show more emotion. Dude starts crying about how sad and lonely men are, and women are like, you fucking loser. This is what I've always known to be true since I was a young man. All this talk about feminists are for young men, it's lies. It's a cap.
I swear to God.
It's a cap.
I swear to God.
Why would you need men's rights activists? You guys are seeing it right now.
I swear to God, that shit about wanting to be more vulnerable and seeing feelings, y'all don't really want it.
No.
Y'all don't really want it because time to time,
no.
Whenever that happens, y'all weaponize that bitch. Yeah. Trust. Y'all weaponize that bitch. Sorry, keep on.
They have a point, and once again, we can't pretend as if the sample size they use from the tweets they pull are indicative of how most feminists would react to seeing Jordan Peterson cry about the topic in that video.
All this talk about feminists are for young men, it's lies. It's a cap.
I swear to God.
It's a cap.
I swear to God.
Why would you need men's rights activists? You guys are seeing it right now. Emotion. Dude starts crying about how sad and lonely men are, and women are like, you fucking loser.
Some women that you saw on Twitter. And this is why we as social media influencers need to be very careful about how we generalize what we see on the internet to the rest of the population. Because yes, these tweets are fucking disgusting. And yes, the people who wrote them also seem to be wrestling with their own sexism and misandry. And yes, there are women all over the world who need to interrogate their own internalized misogyny. Last week, I put out a video and someone asked, do you think Fresh and Fit are right when they say that guys should only talk to their guy friends about their emotions? And I'll tell you exactly what I said in response. I said guys should feel comfortable sharing their emotions with their girlfriends, while recognizing most women don't know how to handle a man sharing his emotions, and it's a dirty secret that no one likes to talk about. There's even a good portion of women, in my opinion, who feel uncomfortable around a man when he opens up. Some are even repulsed by it. But that isn't our fault. That's not your fault. That's not my fault. That's them. And sometimes you'll even meet a woman who claims she's a feminist and encourages men to embrace the mushy side of themselves. But in her private life, she prefers to be with a man who's emotionally vacuous. Because chances are she's so wrapped up in her own emotional needs that she sees tending to her man's needs as an inconvenience. It's her emotions that need to take center stage at all times. The only male emotion women are taught to navigate at a young age is anger. They're really effective at navigating angry men, and for these reasons, it is so important for men to find the right women, especially if you're someone who knows you benefit from talking things out and opening up about how you feel. Don't deprive yourself. Search for a woman who can give you that. It'll take some time to find her, but they're out there. I've met them. Some women are completely fine listening to your emotions and are actually attracted to men who show emotional transparency, and others not so much. You just have to try your best to find an open-minded girl who's caring, nurturing, accepting, and wants to hear what you think and how you feel. Those women, as Abba and Preach point out, are unfortunately in short supply based on my anecdotal experiences and observation. But they're out there. I've met them, and I've even dated a couple. The last piece of advice I shared with this individual is that we as men should be mindful of how much we're sharing with our partners. When I was young, I used to trauma dump and overshare, especially with women I felt comfortable around. And I'm telling y'all that in hopes that it'll help you in your future relationships or in your present relationships if you're in one right now. See, but you have to understand that sort of disposition attracts two types of women. The fixers who see you as their pet project, or on the more malignant side of things, people with narcissistic tendencies, people who pretend to listen empathically, but in all reality are using your words and your emotions as ammunition to fire back at you the second there's any turmoil in the relationship. In the end, you can choose to share your emotions with anybody, but my advice is to be intentional with who you're sharing them with, how much you're sharing, and consider what they're getting out of the conversation. Lastly, yes, find guy friends you can share your emotions with, absolutely, but don't substitute that for the emotional fulfillment you can and deserve to receive from your romantic partner.
Why would you need men's rights activists? You guys are seeing it right now.
I swear to God, that shit about wanting to be more vulnerable and seeing feelings, I swear to God, y'all don't really want it.
No.
Y'all don't really want it because time to time, whenever that happens, y'all weaponize that bitch. Yeah. Trust. Y'all weaponize that bitch. Sorry, keep on going.
So
in order to understand certain things, you have to be able to listen, which is not what we're doing right now. I'm not talking about us, I'm talking about society in general. It's funny whenever we ask and we talk about, we always talk about tolerance. We always talk about tolerance, and people need to be tolerant. We need to be tolerant. But the people that are talking to the people that they deem not tolerant are not being tolerant themselves. So you're becoming the thing that you're pointing your finger at without even you noticing. You got to be tolerant. I can't tolerate that. You shouldn't be. Why does he even have a platform? So if I want to tackle some shit that I don't understand, or that's wrong, we need to have a discussion about it to understand where it's from. Maybe there's something in there. Something that we're missing. missing whenever we talk about burning the witch.
I'm having a hard time understanding who you're talking about when you say we. I know you said society, but when you say we, it makes it sound like you're not including yourself in the fold. And I love y'all to death, but y'all are also responsible for tearing people to shreds in your content. And by no means am I saying I'm innocent. Lord knows I voiced strong opposition to Andrew Tate, Fresh and Fit, and Nick Fuentes on my channel. I've also went in on certain aspects of the Me Too movement, on people who use social justice to virtue signal and say, look at me, I'm so high and mighty. And I've also criticized the liberal Hollywood elite.
You know, the era where we used to burn the witch, that era never really stopped. The type of witch we was burning changed. So see him cry like that, I can understand, because it's like you really, those people that hurt you really want to hurt them, so you try to compare them to the worst thing possible just to get at them. You couldn't get at them intellectually, so you're gonna get at them with name calling and shit.
I agree, but by that same token, you are basically describing Jordan Peterson's method to engage in dialogue, as he has sued and demonized and name called people that he disagrees with. And
being called like a fascist and this and that when you're just trying to comprehend. And in order to comprehend, you're going to have to break some, comprehend. In order to comprehend and to eat the omelet of knowledge, you're going to need to break those eggshells. And it's going to cause a bunch of problems and shit. You're going to have the courage to break that shell. And in doing all that, because you're just trying to comprehend, you're being called all those kinds of names and stuff like that. I can understand.
No. But the issue, Preach, is that Jordan Peterson has not shown any initiative to comprehend opposing viewpoints, besides the occasional debate with a leftist thinker. Listen, before we set standards on somebody else, we need to do a better job at setting standards for ourselves. Because you can't pretend to be a moral authority when you're calling people out of their name in every other video, and your platform has been built on damaging people's reputations for what they say and what they do. So that's a criticism that I would respectfully put forth with regards to abaandpreach. Are there times where they dunked on somebody and I thought it was justified or humorous? Yes, absolutely. Like when they called out the R. Kelly, when they called out R. Kelly, or when they called out the pedo who recorded himself in the car. I was also entertained when they started going in on Fresh and Fit, but nevertheless, they can still be ruthless. Just like I, at times, can be a little too sharp with my critiques.
My own community, I can't, sometimes I shut the fuck up. I shut up about, but guys, let's just think about, that person kind of has a point because, oh my God, you Uncle Tom, you this and that. You can't even talk. You can't even have a discourse. And I understand why people don't let you talk. They're hurt, so they can't. It's all fucking trauma that's talking. At the same time that I understand that there's trauma, but I also understand that it's not working. You can't talk to someone like that. You cannot talk with someone that has trauma. Leave it alone.
We have to acknowledge everyone's transgressions, right? Not just the people who disagree with us.
At some point you shut down. Or if you keep on talking because, you're trying to do the right thing, it's going to hurt you. Your big ass armor that you have is going to lose its efficiency at some point. So I understand where he's from. I understand why he's crying. I understand all of that. We've lost this conversation. I don't even think that we ever had it. But we lost this conversation that we in the society. The key thing to understand each other in a conversation, not to prove a point or to win an argument, but just to understand each other. I can disagree with you and just still understand where you're coming from.
But Preach, that's essentially what y'all have built your brand off of: creating arguments, winning arguments, exposing people that you think are stupid or mistaken. So when we have these conversations, or when we see videos of Jordan Peterson crying, the first place we need to look is within. We have to ask ourselves, what are we doing to perpetuate the destruction that is taking place in the world? What are we doing to perpetuate our own trauma, but potentially someone else's? Perhaps a more pressing question to ask is, what are we doing to spread love? But kind of like Preach said, some of us feel so empty inside. Or in the inverse, some of us are carrying so much pain that blinds us from searching for answers from within. Perhaps when we search for answers from within, we start thinking about the things we know we ought to do but are not doing. Or in the inverse, we start thinking about the things we ought not to do but are doing. This produces feelings of guilt, shame, embarrassment.
And just that, but we're not there yet. That's what I think. What do you think?
Yeah, so I've never really cared for Jordan Peterson's like politics, but I've always enjoyed a lot of his like psychology related pictures and stuff. I watched like a lot of those, and they're very interesting. He said something there that I thought was interesting when he posed the question of being the incel, the king of incel.
I thought the marginalized were supposed to have a voice.
And it's weird, but
Keep going.
you know, even the title involuntary celibate, meaning like, I don't want this, but it is where I'm at. They really do feel help. Now, we can argue that it's of their own decisions. You can argue for some folks it's a choice or they're making bad decisions. You can make a lot of those arguments. But I'm just telling you what they think in their own head. They think they are a victim of circumstance. And whether you believe that or not, what is true is that they are suffering. Now, how they manifest that suffering, be it in terms of insane rhetoric against women or whatever it might be, that is not something we should accept. But there should be a certain level of sympathy for understanding that these are just tremendously lonely individuals who are suffering. I don't look at women who are approaching the age of 40 crying because they can't find somebody and then think, well, good. I think that's incredibly sad. When you got these moms crying that they still need to lean on their parents in the ages of 40 because like they haven't made it, I don't think that's great. No, that's sad. And if people want to work with these people to help them make better choices or to help them understand these things better, I'm all for it. At the end of the day, irrespective of whether or not their decisions got them to where they're at or not, what is true, okay, is for what's good for a society as a whole, if we can change people's mindset to some degree, if we can make people make better choices in life, that's good for everyone. Because guess what? Disaffected, lonely people are not good for society as a whole.
That's true.
Because those are the people that you can radicalize. Those
true.
are the people that you can turn violent. People ask me like why Jordan Peterson became popular, and it was really that one line that everyone started repeating everywhere. Remember that line? Clean your room.
Clean your room before you try to change the world.
Yes.
Yeah.
And why did men gravitate towards that message so?
Because there's a lot of motherfuckers that are going to point out the fingers while 3 fingers are pointing back at them.
It's because a lot of men need to be told to take responsibility. People ask me like prescriptively, what would you tell young men to do today? Should they go to college? Should they start their own business? I'm like, take some responsibility in life. Move out, get your own apartment, start paying your own bills, get a job, start taking care of your community service. Start doing shit. Take on responsibility. Men need to hear that because more and more men are checking out. More and more. Checking out of schools, checking out of diplomas, checking out of the dating market. And promise you this, in 20 years, you're going to see those big effects. I think the polarization will continue. And I think those who claim to be for the disenfranchised aren't willing to admit that young men are the disenfranchised in a lot of ways. And they don't care to. Just the other day, when he was talking to me, she's like, you know what I just learned recently? I was like, what? She's like, apparently dudes kill themselves a lot. I was like, yeah, we do it way more after.
Recently,
this happened last week, this conversation. So they don't know. Most of them don't care. And they pretend they do because it's the right thing to say from a PR standpoint. None of their policies, none of the stuff that they support, or even the rhetoric online indicates that. The amount of women who say like, oh yeah, I care. Men are trash right afterwards. Oh yes. Best believe I heard of that.
Yeah.
Oh, I care about men. Then why is it that the pinned post on your Twitter page is men are trash?
And it's fine, and it's actually fine that you don't care about it. It's fine. It's fine because, boo-boo, you got your own shit to worry about. But if you got your own shit up to worry about and it's fine that you don't care, let other people care. And that's the reason why there's some things like that happening. Because some of y'all really don't care. The problem is that some of y'all don't care and claim that you do when you really don't.
I also think that the term incel, like, I don't even know if people know what it means. Because I've been called an incel. I'm like, bitch, how am I an incel when I'm inside a bitch right now?
We've been called everything. So
well, you think that women's standards are too high.
That don't mean
incel. Like,
that don't mean that. Well, I told you that already.
Yeah.
The minute there's a word, that shit is like the new invention since paprika. They fucking sprinkled that shit like it was some Jamaican seasoning. Like they just sprinkled that new word. You're that. We've been called everything in the same sentence.
All right. There you go. Final words. Jordan Peterson's influence raises 2 fundamental questions. The first is, how do we as educators empower young men not to overinflate their egos, but to feel empowered? The second question is, how do we help young men overcome their feelings of inadequacy? I'm not saying Jordan Peterson has had a net positive on society or the mental health of young disaffected men. However, if we don't start taking men's issues and men's mental health issues seriously, people like Jordan Peterson, people like Andrew Tate, people like Olivia Wilde, people like Joe Rogan will continue to fill that gap while profiting from the misery of young men. And to be clear, men's mental health is not an issue that specifically impacts men, because the consequences of living in a society full of young, disillusioned men is disastrous for all people. For instance, we know that violence against women is significantly higher in areas where men are less likely to request or have insufficient access to mental health support. In societies where men are underemployed or unemployed, the same holds true. And look, I know that criticizing the red pill movement has become the trendy thing to do. Lord knows I've done quite a bit of it on my own channel. But seriously, we as thoughtful and caring individuals need to come up with a plan, an alternative way of dealing with male suffering, while at the same time acknowledging the suffering that men inflict on society. And if we don't, we're doomed.